Jews, first of all, they don't understand who they are. Second of all, they hate who they are.
People hated Jews as long as, it's the oldest profession. Right after prostitution, it was like anti-Semite. Why do I get blamed for the troubles of the world? What can I do about it? As Tolstoy said, everybody wants to change the world. Nobody wants to change themselves. There's a whole movie stretching thousands of years into the past behind you and hopefully thousands of years into the future, and you have a part in it. Maybe that's what we're saying. Maybe that's what this podcast is all about.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Okay, listen, enough of that shit. This is a podcast, and we're not going to try to find, we're going to find the solution to anti-Semitism, okay? We're going to stop that right here, right now, from this stinking basement. When we get to the bottom of this, we're going to read from this mystery book, which you're not going to find out about until the end of the series. And we're going to really entertain every perspective. We're not going to say, oh, you can't say this, you can't say that. No, we're going to say everything. Because if we're not going to be able to talk about it, we're not going to be able to solve it. We're going to really grab you in the kishke and we're going to squeeze until we get something, right? Either a bowel movement or a freaking solution. We want to know what happened 3,500 years ago in Babylon that started this whole mishugas, and we want to finish it here in 2020. That's it. So I want to read you a little excerpt from Tony Kushner's Angels in America. Remember that play?
Yep.
So it goes, Harper says, in your experience of the world, how do people change? Mormon mother. Well, it has something to do with God, so it's not very nice. God splits the skin with a jagged thumbnail from throat to belly and then plunges a huge filthy hand in. He grabs hold of your bloody tubes and they slip to evade his grasp, but he squeezes hard. He insists. He pulls and pulls till all your innards are yanked out, and the pain, we can't even talk about that. And then he stuffs them back, dirty, tangled and torn. It's up to you to do the stitching, Harper. And then up you get and walk around, Mormon mother. Just mangled guts pretending. Harper, that's how people change.
Shh. Oh, isn't there an easier way?
I wish there was. I wish there was. But for some reason, we're very stubborn, I think. Are you a stubborn person, Seth?
I'm a stubborn person, for sure. I think the premise has to be, though, that it doesn't have to be literally, physically mangled. My mom used to say that, like, lessons come to us in life, and then if we don't, like, deal with it, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger until we deal with it. Like, it was a very kind of simple thing that she used to say to me all the time, and
that's a very smart thing to say. The question is, are we getting the lesson? We collectively, the nation, the tribe, are we hearing it? A friend of mine was listening to the podcast and she said, I loved everything you're saying, but I feel like you're repeating yourself a lot. and I said, right.
My dad used to say, speaking of my parents today, my dad used to always say, it's what you don't know about what you don't know, son. And I think that's, what my mom was referring to is kind of the things that you begin to know. You're like, you know things and you're having problems. But I think the issue that we're talking about in this book is what we don't know about what we don't know. And I don't think anyone is actually guilty yet. It can't be like, oh, the Jews, why did they keep doing this? Or, oh, the Jews, why do they keep doing that? I mean, go all the way back to Moses. He takes the people out of Egypt, and right away they start complaining. So how can you even blame them? How can you blame a little kid for doing something wrong? How does he know? How is he supposed to know what's right? He just popped out into the world, a few
Well,
months ago.
If we had this podcast 2,000 years ago, I would say, it's anyone's guess. But since it's 2020, the year of hindsight, I think we should look back and... if someone's been listening this far, I hope they've been connecting the dots like we have.
Of course they've been listening.
Of course, it's true. No, because I get this comment on one of our podcasts. Someone says, "So what do you want? Jews do terrible things to each other, as do other nations. Why are we different? Or why do I, Mr. So-and-so, what do I have to do with it? Why do I get blamed for the troubles of the world? What can I do about it? I understand. And even more than that, I want to say this, that there was another quote on, say, from Twitter. Someone said, all these facts you're bringing up, you're just using them to promote your toxic agenda. And I said, toxic agenda meaning...
toxic agenda, unity of the Jewish people? Unity of humanity?
Exactly. Yes, that's a toxic agenda. So this is the time we live in.
I experienced the same thing. I sent you this week a screenshot. I wrote on in some Facebook group, I'm looking to put together Jews of all different colors, Jews of all different sexual orientations, to speak about unity. And someone wrote back, this is, it's clear that you don't understand the plight of the, once again, white Ashkenazi Jews don't understand what black Jews are going through. And you want to, I don't know what it is, overturn something. And I said, wow. So first I was upset. And then I thought to myself, how can we say what we're trying to say in a way that people get it, that unity is our solution? That's what we're getting at here. I mean, that's what we're discovering, that if we separate ourselves more and more, it's not going to be good.
Well, I think, last chapter, we talked about the birth of Zionism, how Jews left the shtetl, joined the Russian society, and immediately took the cause of the worker, started revolutions, eventually helped murder the Tsar and all of that. I think we feel inside that need to bring good to the world, but as Tolstoy said, everybody wants to change the world. Nobody wants to change themselves. And if
I thought you wrote that. I saw you post that this week.
No, I wrote that right on the bottom. I said Tolstoy said something to that effect. I gave him credit. The hardest thing is to change yourself. So if Jews took that revolutionary spirit that so many accused them of, but applied it on themselves.
Need a revolution inside of me.
Exactly. If we did it on ourselves, I think people would be less harsh in their reaction. Nobody would say, what about these guys and those guys? Because we would be busy fixing ourselves. And I think that's the start of it. I saw just the other day, I saw a picture from the protests in Israel now happening, where they so beautifully copied some of those terrible things we saw in the protests here as well. And one guy was holding up a sign, it's okay to hate. I'm adding the inflection. But that's what the sign said. If we got to a point where we say it's okay to hate one another, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because once you hit rock bottom, you can push back up. But it's quite telling. We're allowing ourselves to hate. We're not busy fixing the one thing that's broken between us, as we see and hear, that essence of being a Jew, unity.
It's also that there's always truth in something. There's some truth in it's okay to hate, but it's the wrong place. Again, you said a minute ago, if we were looking inward, if we understand the thing that we need to hate is the separation between us. That's what it's okay to hate. It's okay to hate that we're so divided. It's okay.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, hate that.
That's probably not what the person meant who was holding up that sign.
Yeah, I feel like we're stalling because
I feel the same.
because we don't want to get back to the book, because we know how the story ends, how that chapter ends. I mean, these two chapters, we're entering into two chapters that talk about the first one talking about the unification of Germany and dissolution of German Jewry, and it continues with the Holocaust. And it's one of those things that I feel like we need to have a whole episode just on why we think we, two privileged Jews from the 20th century, can talk about what was going on in the Holocaust 100 years ago.
And what can we say that's unique? How are we going to deliver this in a way that doesn't sound cliche, and in a way that everybody's, oh, here they go with the same old story again? What is unique about?
And without insulting hundreds of thousands of Jewish survivors living in Israel and elsewhere.
A cousin last night sent me a message on Facebook about some crazy story of some guy who was going to his death in a camp, and someone threw him something. It turned out it was a tefillin, bag with tefillin in it, and he said he realized if he was caught with this, he would be killed, and so he hid it under his shirt. And then the next morning, he put the tefillin on, and a guard saw him and said, "You can't do this. I'm going to take you outside and hang you." And before they hung him, they said, one last wish. He said, I want to be hung with my tefillin on. And the Germans said, oh, what a disgrace. How could you, and so a whole long story. And it turned out the guy survived. And by the miracle of the tefillin, he survived. And it's like, well, I mean, that's an incredible story. But what kind of miracle is it that all these Jews are dying? Responsible, we always say, wow, it was a miracle. This guy survived. And now I'm his grandchild. And what a miracle. No, it's not a miracle. What is it? A miracle that 6 million died? Oh, it's a miracle she survived the storm. Well, what do you mean? God helped her survive the storm. Well, what do you mean? Then God is also responsible for killing the other 15,000 people that died in the hurricane. Let's look at the
big picture. It's always like that. If it somehow improves my situation, then it's a miracle. It's great. And if not, God is terrible. That's always how it is.
It's a touching story.
It's human nature. I know it's human nature, by the way, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing with organ transplant. In order for some person to live, someone else has to die. But you don't say, "Oh, it's a miracle I survived."
It's a touching story that she sent me, and it's true, and all these, or what, if it's true, and all those kind of things. But we have to zoom out at some point. We have to zoom out. It's not enough to say like, "Oh, look, this white blood cell defeated this red blood cell. That's wonderful." No, you need to look at the entire body.
So that brings Seth. I didn't want to bring it up, but I feel like it's an important point to make. I think we touched on it in one of the earlier episodes. But you like movies?
Yeah.
I want to know, when you're watching a movie, are you watching is it a fluid, continuous motion, or are you watching a collection of discrete frames?
No,
which one are you watching?
I think it's. I think it's
a movie, right?
It's a movie. Yeah, you suspend that it's actors. You suspend, all the different.
I'm not talking about the fact that it's acting. I'm talking about the actual technical miracle of the movie, where it's made of individual. There's no fluid motion.
Yeah.
No, but there's no fluid motion. You're watching a succession of frames. It was more evident even back then when they were actually shot on film, right?
Yeah, right.
It was actually you're watching frames. Frame after frame, but when they move fast enough, you can say, "Oh, it's one thing. This is connected to that. What's happening? This part of the movie is connected to that." But someone could say, "No. This is a totally different frame. In this frame, the hero was a terrible guy, and he was being beaten up, and he was dying. In this frame, he is dying in this frame. We should stop everything and just lament the death of this hero. And in this frame, he's beating up the bad guys, and he's getting the girl, and this is where we should celebrate. We should watch this frame, right?" And we're not making the connection that it's all one thing. Now, the funny thing is, or I don't know if it's funny, maybe it's sad. I heard from a friend of mine that discussion in academia about history is whether history is made of individual frames, and you should analyze and understand each frame in its own context, and has nothing to do with the other frames, or if history is really one fluid thing.
Oh, well, the good news is on Earth, fruit comes out ripe on the first day. You don't have to wait for it to ripen. On this planet where we live, it's just a mango pop one day, a banana pop, it's yellow. Mango pop, it's ripe. Cherries pop, they're ready to eat. There's no ripening process on Earth. Everything is delivered perfectly finished in its sweet final form.
Sarcasm. Sarcasm. I like it. But so it's funny that, you get it, I get it, I think every person on the street gets it, but yet you have people with high degrees and big salaries who are arguing whether or not these frames are connected. There's a process leading from one thing to another, and say, no. If someone hated the Jews in the 2nd century CE, it has nothing to do with the hatred of the Jews 500 years later. And it's nothing to do with the hatred of the Jews 1,500 years later. Those are different people, different time, different hate. Let it go. I heard it from a friend of mine who is a history. He's not a professor yet, but he's heading the program of anti-Semitism in University of Haifa, and I was amazed. He said, "Yes, this is what it all comes down to. Most people, most historians, most people in the world that deals with knowledge and facts and they look at things as individual, separate events. If a group of guys beats up a Jew, has nothing to do with all the Jews, all the history of the Jews."
This is the whole education process today, because everything has to be like standardized testing and everything like that. Everything comes down to, that NASA study that says like 90 something percent of kids are geniuses when they're born, and like 4% of adults are, still geniuses, because through your person's life, person becomes more and more in a box and becomes more and more specialized and doesn't...
More discreet.
Yeah, doesn't
right?
hear things around them, doesn't absorb things around them as much. And so everything becomes, what can I use in this 1 minute to make my life better or worse?
It's a human condition. We're busy with that one frame. Can I fix what's happening in this one frame, this one moment, this one lifetime, this one body, right? I'll fix that. Everything will be fine. And be like, no. There's a whole movie stretching thousands of years into the past behind you, and hopefully thousands of years into the future, and you have a part in it. Maybe that's what we're saying. Maybe that's what this podcast is all about. You want to read?
I want that story to feel personal, because when you said that, okay, thousands of years, but where am I in it? What do I have to do with all of this? How do I matter?
You matter because it's one film, and you're the hero of it. And if you don't do something now,
end podcast. That's it. We just realized the whole thing. I'm the hero. That's what I was waiting. I was waiting all these episodes for you to tell me.
Go out there and fix the world and bring love into everyone's hearts and forget all that nonsense.
Okay, what's happening? Where are we? Chapter 6. What's going on? Bring us. How did the Jews get to Germany? What's going on here?
Well, let's just read the first 2 paragraphs.
Okay. Chapter 6, the unification of Germany and the dissolution of German Jewry. Like all golden eras in Jewish history, the First Temple, Second Temple, the Spanish convivencia, and even to a lesser extent the integration of Jewish intelligentsia in Russia, the emancipation of the Jewish people in Europe and their integration into the general society started out as a great promise and ended in cataclysm. In the case of German Jewry, that tragedy entailed near annihilation not only of German Jewry, but of European Jewry altogether. Within 6 years, in the course of World War II, though in truth mainly during the years 1942 to 1945, during the implementation of the final solution plan, European Jewry was gassed to death, shot to death, and suffocated in cars of animal trains to the point of near extinction. The Holocaust, which wiped out nearly 150 years of Jewish efforts to acculturate themselves into the European society and culture, nearly wiped out the Jews themselves. Oof.
This is the premise of what we're trying to gently analyze and learn from in this episode. And it's the repeat of the same pattern which we refuse to see that ends up badly for us. No matter how good the one frame we live in is looking now, if this is part of the same pattern, we know how it ends.
The aspiration to renounce one's Jewishness and sometimes Judaism altogether wears many attires, but the bottom line is that assimilation always entails a drift from the root of Judaism, namely love of others. Instead, Jews adopt local values and morals, strive either to convert or to reform Judaism in order to adapt it to the surrounding milieu, and develop local patriotism, making their host country their, quote, New Jerusalem. But since Jews are not an ordinary nation, but one with a vocation that haunts its members and demands its fulfillments, as the antisemites quoted earlier in the book articulated so eloquently, our efforts to merge and dissolve in the host culture never succeed. Instead, those efforts backfire painfully. Leo, the problem is Jews, first of all, they don't understand who they are. Second of all, they hate who they are. Hate who they are. This is saying
why
Jews are...
Why do we hate?
This is because
why do we hate it?
This is saying that Jews are different than other people.
And today it's a terrible thing to say. If you call yourself different than others, this is
But there's also something weird because I see so many... I see all my kids' friends. They're all into rap music. They all love black culture. Every single one of them listens to, like, basically every artist they listen to is black. They all listen to hip hop all the time. It's basically all they listen to. If you are black today and you say Black Lives Matter, it's fine. It's something to be proud of. In fact, I live in a town with mostly white people who have signs on their lawn saying Black Lives Matter. But if you said Jewish Lives Matter, it's insane.
Hopefully people will hear that episode in maybe 2 months from now. So maybe everyone is going to be more chill. Maybe, I don't think so.
But there's something weird about the Jewish thing that's different than another thing. Like, even if you were to say, like, Irish Lives Matter, it doesn't feel the same as saying forget the Lives Matter part. just to
just to say Jews.
just to say the word Jew. Yeah, it feels different than saying black. It feels different than saying Chinese. It feels different than all these other things for some reason.
So just a disclaimer, in case you didn't immediately disconnect after you heard the whole thing about Black Lives Matter, that we think the plight of black people right now in this country to eradicate their feeling of racism, the feeling of hostility from the police, and all those other injustices is important and justified. What we're focusing on here is something that we feel is at the heart of a lot of those.
Yeah. This is not to belittle anything. This is just to say that the Jewish thing feels. You can't even talk about it.
Right. But that's the thing. Remember how we started the podcast all those months ago? Like, we can't talk about it, but we have to talk about it. But we want to grab you in the kishkin. We're going to squeeze it. Because if you don't talk about it, it doesn't go away. If you don't talk about it, you have to talk about it. You have to say something is up. If you don't, then you just repeat the same thing. Let's see what happens when you repeat. I had this clip. I told you about this clip before. I want to play it. First of all, make everyone chuckle. It's a clip from The Simpsons when Homer decides he wants cable TV and he doesn't want to pay for it. So let's watch that. And when you will hear it, it's a podcast, naturally. But it will give us a little good chuckle and a lesson in repetition. Hold on, there it is.
Crazy scheme, crazy scheme, crazy scheme.
Get me tools and beer.
Yes!
Free service, here we come. All right, let's try the red one. Okay, I'll try the green. Let's try the red one again. Not again! Let's try them together. Maybe the red one. How did I get here?
Yeah, if you don't remember that episode, so he climbs the telephone post trying to get free cable by messing with the wires. That's the thing. You repeat the same mistake until the shock is so great that you don't even remember why the thing that happened just happened. You spend then 100 years in therapy just trying to get over the thing that happened, not realizing that maybe you have a hand in it. There is some free choice in the system, probably, but how did we get here? What is our responsibility in it?
When we say "our," let's also remember when we're talking about Jews, we're talking about any person. I mean, this group that Abraham put together that we learned about at the beginning of the book, they wasn't like a bunch of Eastern Europeans with big noses. We're talking about all kinds of people that formed this group together. It's talking about people with an inner inclination. That's what this is talking about. It's not talking about a guy with a black hat. It's talking about any person with this inclination. Doesn't matter the color of the skin. Doesn't matter the gender.
That's what we're saying, that this is something, being a Jew is not about all those things, although we are also seeing that keeping those external vestiges did serve a certain purpose. Like I don't think it was total anachronism, and it was wrong from the get-go to look different and all that.
We're not we both have beards, but we're not wearing black hats.
I just didn't shave because of the quarantine. No, you're right. In these times, I think the externality served a purpose, right? You didn't have a little Star of David next to your Twitter profile. If everything became virtual in 50 years from now and all you had was your profile, I guarantee people would put certain signs on the profile to show who they are. You want to feel that you're part of a group. When you look at other people and say, oh, he's also one of my group, it serves a great purpose to uphold that natural adhesion that existed between them. But what we're seeing, and what we've seen, the chapter opens with this repetition, right? What we've seen during the Spanish, the days of the Spanish Inquisition, and now is that the opposition of people is not to Jews themselves as oh, you're a Jew. No, it's this attempt to merge with the local people, in this case, with the Germans. It's this desire to move away from that internal ideal, forget what you're here to do away with all the external things, but mostly with the internal things. There was a series of riots, which we're not going to get into, but it was in the early 1819. So we're backtracking a little bit from where we were in the last episode. We were in the late 19th century. This is early 19th century in Germany, in all those little kingdoms that make up what would be future Germany. And these series of riots suddenly come out of seemingly from nowhere. A little bit like today, when you look at a car stops on King's Highway, a bunch of guys step out and just jump on a 51-year-old Jew and beat the crap out of him. And I'm sure he's walking around thinking, like, what the hell just happened? Why me? Why now? So the same thing. Suddenly, these students and not just students, they run into the streets. They start yelling and they assault a professor that talks about giving equal rights to Jews. They destroy things and all that. And as usual, people look for the rational reason. Right? What happened? Like, what did I do to you? Because it made no sense. 90% of German Jews were poor, or very poor. 10% were beggars. 10% of those 90%, and more rich Jews lived in Prussia at the time than anywhere else, where there were no riots at all. So it's almost like it makes no sense.
No riots where the rich Jews were.
No, and then the riots have this double effect on the Jews. It makes some Jews say, "Okay, let's assimilate faster," and on the other Jews, it says, "Let's get closer together."
So Germany is becoming its own. Okay, so here he says. Let's go back to the early 19th century, shortly after the release of Germany from Napoleon's grip. In the wake of the French Revolution and the spirit of liberalism it brought with it, the Jews who had been excluded from Christian European society for centuries enthusiastically embraced the new zeitgeist. Jews throughout Europe lobbied their respective governments for emancipation. Having for centuries been regarded as non-citizens without any rights, the Jews began to demand from their ruler citizenship and treatment equal to that of non-Jewish residents. So, Leo, what really strikes me and what I keep saying episode after episode is that there's these two parallel histories, and there's no good media around being a Jew in this way. There's no good heroes around this story, right? All of the stories, all of the romance, all of the powerful imagery is the development of normal humanity. But there's this parallel history, this history of the Jews that are supposed to be like moving in step with humanity, but kind of one step ahead of humanity, and it can contain anybody who is drawn towards unity. It's like two kids in high school, or a group of kids in high school, and one of them is going to be an Olympic gymnast or an Olympic swimmer, and all the other friends are hanging out on Friday night, and all the other friends are going for a beer in the woods on Saturday, right? And he just wants to just be with everyone and enjoy his life. And so he just goes over and does that, and he has a good life, and then whatever, he ends up a regular guy. But if he would have stayed his course, he would have been the gold medal Olympic.
Well, so let's take this exact story, but add a twist to it. So he's not a gold medalist. He's working on finding a cure for cancer.
There you go.
Okay, he's got to geek out on Yeah, exactly. He's got to geek out on in the books and study and spend. And he keeps running away, right? Jumping out the window,
what happens
joining
is
his friends in the woods.
If he has enough people around,
and for a while, listen. And for a while, they're like, yeah, okay, it's cool, it's all. But then years later, they grow up, and one of the kids, God forbid, is now his wife is sick with cancer. It's like, where's that cancer medication? I was like, what do you mean cancer medication? I was out there partying with you. No, you're supposed to geek out and study and come up with a cure for cancer.
So, and then everyone hates him because he was the only one who could have fixed the cancer. If that guy had friends around him, had podcasts around him, had things around him to let him know how great this is, then he would have the ability to hold that course and see the unity and learn about the unity and develop the unity, and then everyone can be happy. Then all of his friends that were in the woods partying can be together. They can all be together. Everyone can be together in this unity. But he's the guy who's holding the unity. If he goes and hangs out with the friends in the woods and drinks and parties, it's fun, but it ends like all parties end. And then
nobody drunk stupor on the floor.
Nobody dealt with the cancer issue. Right,
exactly.
Yeah. So there needs to be around this guy, because otherwise the pull to just be with everyone, to enjoy life, because all we want to do is enjoy life. So why do I need to go sit by myself and study this unity thing, solve cancer, something like that, where everyone else is enjoying life? I want to enjoy also.
Well, maybe because we all stand to enjoy life even more.
But then we need a society around us that's fun, that excites us, that inspires us, that talks about this on a great podcasts that
including those guys in the woods drinking. They should also come to the home of the geek and be like, yeah, here, we brought you some food and we love you and do it. You can do it.
You can do it. It's going to be great.
Everybody's.
No one's going to be sick.
We next episode, maybe we'll talk about the fourth turning. It's an interesting thing. It's a study. It was coined by this group of people who did market research, and they just did market research about generational similarities and differences, and suddenly they start to see a pattern emerge, and it's beautiful. We'll bring it up next episode. But let's read a little bit about 1848.
All right. A Minnesota State University essay concisely concludes that, quote, in exchange for greater legal rights and greater acceptance in society, Jews in France, Britain, Germany, and elsewhere discarded many of their older customs. Ironically, continues the essay, this assimilation helped give rise to a newer form of anti-Jewish prejudice. As Judaic historian Robert Seltzer noted, the new prejudice was a backlash against Jewish success upon entering the mainstream of European society. And in that, and just as the conversos were targeted in Spain, the acculturated, rather than the traditional Jew, was the main focus of fear.
So this is where it's a little different than today, right now. Well, I shouldn't say totally different. It started, if you remember when we started the podcast, people were targeting the ones who looked
Jewish.
Exactly. And now everything is becoming more insidious, more under the surface. People in universities, what's her name? Bari Weiss resigned from the New York Times because she was talking too much about the Jewish problem, and she got harassed by it. So it seems like every time there's an awakening, there's a great awakening among the people, sort of a liberal spirit, and the Jews are inevitably part of it. And they think, oh, now we're going to get the justice we deserve. Everybody's going to become friends.
Right. The Jews who didn't have a quote unquote real traditional Jewish education or a real kind of religious Jewish education, but instead went into business or went into whatever. Those are the ones now that we see, with this whole, Ice Cube and Nick Cannon and this Canadian rapper Willie Wiley, whatever his name is, right? They're not being angry at some Orthodox guy in the street. They're talking about Hollywood and lawyers and not religious Jews. They're talking about assimilated Jews.
They're talking about the concept of Jews. Yeah, exactly. Not the outside expression of that. It's what it represents.
Right. It's an assimilated Jew. Like, not that some Jews in some ghetto in Brooklyn are praying to, and that's the problem, but that the way that the Jews act in the society.
And it's interesting because in every generation you have those who think. I'm reading it from these historians Frankel and Zipperstein. They write that many German and Jewish liberals believed that Jews would never become true citizens of the state until they abandoned their distinctive customs. So this is kind of a natural thing, right? We look different, we sound different, we have different holidays. Let's just drop all that and become part of the society we live in. Everything will be fine.
You have Jews, whoring and eating shrimp cocktail, and those are still the Jews that are people that are against.
Don't say that.
It doesn't matter if you drop what?
No Jews eating a shrimp cocktail. No, nobody knows about the shrimp cocktail.
Regardless, you could drop all of the customs, but it's still a Jew. There's something still there that people hate.
Look what this guy wrote. Let's read that line from Glenn R. Scharfman, professor of history.
One Jewish liberal became so enthralled by the promise of emancipation that he wrote, "The Messiah, for whom we prayed for these thousands of years,
the Messiah
has appeared, and our fatherland was given to us. The Messiah is freedom. Our fatherland is Germany."
Ouch.
Finally, Sarah Gordon concludes, their aspirations were fulfilled by the legal emancipation of 1869, which was extended to all of Germany under the German Constitution of 1871. So finally, we live in a modern society, meaning Germany, here around the turn of the 19th century. What can we do? We can
eat shrimp cocktails.
We can eat shrimp cocktails. We can go out. We can live together with everyone.
Exactly, everything is fine. But
finally,
if history teaches us anything, as soon as you get the stamp of approval, you're one of us. This
What is this Messiah that I can't even understand? So what did they think the Messiah was going to do? Just turn a Jew into be like everyone else? Like, okay, the Messiah came, now you can eat shrimp.
No, the Messiah is sort of this freedom. Like, oh, we're free. You can be like everyone else. You have your rights. All of Germany, by the way, the Spring of Nations in 1848, what it made is united all these all these German principalities into one empire, which would become the German Empire. So Jews naturally felt that that's it. We're going to be equal citizens in that.
But that's the highest ideal, is just to be able to open a shoe store
to be
and
like
left alone.
Everyone else.
Just to be like everyone else. That's what the Messiah is. That I can work 2 jobs and be up to my neck in credit card debt like everyone else.
Exactly. I'm not better than you. I'm not worse than you. We're equals in every respect. You look at me, I look at you. We're equals. But is this really happening?
By the way, that is wonderful. To be equals with everyone else sounds like a wonderful ideal, but to be equals as everyone else and to just be living this horrible life.
Well, that's a different
and fight.
That's a different.
No, but it's wonderful. At the end, it is what we want, that everyone would be equals in
love,
not in
love.
Yeah,
it's not there yet.
Yeah,
it's not there yet. And what happens 8 years later? And this is an important point. If you're a student of anti-Semitism, and I'm sure you've been waiting to say, well, this is where anti-Semitism comes from.
Wilhelm Marr in 1879, who espoused in his 20s communist ideals, wrote in his anti-Semitic essay, quote, "The Victory of Judaism over Germandom." In it, he coined the term anti-Semitism. In his essay, Marr argued that acculturated Jews would eventually subvert traditional German culture. They would corrupt all German standards, dominate commerce, and push themselves ever more into state services.
He's the one, whenever I speak to people who study anti-Semitism, they bring him up. When I say, what is the root of anti-Semitism? They say, oh, it's easy. I know that one. It's 1879, Wilhelm Marr. That's the beginning of anti-Semitism. I'm like, what are you talking about? People hated Jews as long as, it's the oldest profession. Right after prostitution, it was like anti-Semite. Right? Come on. So this guy coins it. He said that it's not motivated by religious hatred. By the way, by Professor Vistrik, one of the most renowned professors of anti-Semitism, on the topic of anti-Semitism. And he said it was not motivated by religious hatred by this guy. And he even believed that Wilhelm Marr himself believed that no Christian could be a genuine anti-Semite, since Christianity was itself based on Jewish racial tradition. So in his mind, it wasn't even a religious thing. It's true to say that his ideas were they marked the beginning of a new kind of Jew hatred. Okay, the most lethal, as some people would say. I think we'll end with this line from Francis Nicosia.
That one could be both German and Jewish had been a basic premise of Jewish emancipation, one that ultimately proved untenable in modern Germany between 1871 and 1945. Well, I hope our readers see the pattern emerging. Episode after episode, the characters change. What would be really cool? If there was like a movie or something. There has to be a movie. You know more about movies than me. It goes through the generation. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's called Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas, yeah. He goes through the generations, and it's the same characters, but just the.
I mean, they change sides sometimes, and he's a girl, he's a guy, he's the good guys, he's the bad guys.
But it's the same theme, kind of developing through the generations.
Everything repeats itself until, as your mom said, until you get the lesson, right?
Okay, the lesson is...
listen to the Jew podcast, the Jew Function podcast, the Jewcast to cure anti-Semitism. And follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube at the Jew Function. It's always at the Jew Function. I think we're onto something, Seth, but we really need your thoughts, because the next couple episodes are going to be intense.
Everything is in our hands. It's time for a true inner revolution.
Yeah.
Not that we go outside and overthrow some politician just so that another one can come in his place, but that we really change it so that all of humanity can be friends, that we can all be equals in love.
Exactly. Amen to that. Seth, from Brooklyn.
Leo, New Jersey.
Shalom.
See you next time. Shalom.